Hey everyone, welcome to the Joomla Shack conference. Unfortunately, this is taking place instead of the Joomla World Conference that was going to be held in London this weekend. But I hope that by holding an online event, we're able to get people together and still learn some Joomla in a very similar way to the way they would have done in London. We have a whole series of fascinating presentations over the next 3 days. And on this first day, I'm delighted to welcome Speer, who I have known for over a decade now. Duke is based out of Park City, Utah, and has been deep inside nonprofit and project management work. He runs a company called turntothepros.com and is a great guy and a great speaker. Duke, welcome.
Thank you, Steve. And I want to welcome everyone who is online and enjoying this event. It is kind of different to not be in jolly old London at this time of year. Sadly, this experience with Brexit is of course a challenge for things. I'm going to figure out why my screen is not advancing. It's possibly because I've got the wrong thing on top. Let's see how that does. There we go. So that's just kind of a little view of the world around me and where I hang out. And some of you have heard stories, so I thought I'd share the image of the backyard where the moose walk through that creates all those challenges on the way to work each day, as well as there's the driveway. If you've ever heard stories about us driving in and out on the ice each year, we have dirt roads that make life a little bit challenging in our neck of the woods. I live at 7,000 feet in Park City, Utah. It's a fun place to be. In the wintertime, you're likely to find me on a ski resort because I'm a 39-season volunteer ski patroller. So I patrol Sundays at a resort north of here, about an hour, that's called Snow Basin. And then I teach skiing on weekdays at a resort that's just 5 minutes from here, known as Canyons, which is part of the Park City Resort. So if you get out in this neck of the world, don't hesitate to drop in, say hi, and take some runs. So the title of this talk is The Complete Deliverable. And the inspiration for it has to do with some of the challenges that I see as we are dealing with experiences as we're out bidding sites and we're trying to compete for business. And so among the things that I find to be a challenge are sometimes people will define what done is differently depending on who's doing the bidding. And it is hard for a customer to become fully educated about what they're exactly buying so they can do an apples and apples comparison. Of course, a part of this is a whole discussion about who is your ideal customer. And one of the challenges I face periodically is finding that there are nonprofits that I'm talking to which are not a match to my business style. So to go through this talk today, I thought I would take two particular focuses. One is on how to bid jobs and getting paid what you are worth. And it is identifying who that ideal customer is. And then the second half is, in particular, one specific trick I use when I'm trying to reach done. And what that is, and making sure that you don't stop short on the development of a site just because it looks visually complete to a customer. So on bidding jobs, one of the things that I find is when I'm competing a job with somebody, especially if it's another Joomla shop, and there are a couple here in the Salt Lake Valley that can bid sites, but more frequently I'm bidding against WordPress developers, and I do a few WordPress sites every now and then for those who are kicking and screaming and saying they must have WordPress, although I've usually able to talk them out of that on an ease of maintenance basis. But in bidding a site, a lot of discussion goes into what they're truly trying to accomplish. Because frequently I will find a customer walking in the door with almost a pre-canned list of requirements because they've been thinking about this for a while and they're trying to compete a couple of vendors. And almost invariably, the discussion stops and we go back into what their true goals are, what they're trying to accomplish. A lot of the value I will bring to the table is the strategic discussion about why they even need a website, what their strategic goals are, and listing those out. I hear a lot of other organizations will get into what their messaging is and try to get into the content aspects of the site. And from that, they try to do a volume analysis of some metric, like the number of pages that they're going to be developing, or the high-level features that need to be put in, such as an e-commerce site or something like that. But I find that the discussion needs to step back one level and go, what is your true goal, and who are you trying to reach? Who is that ideal customer that you're trying to walk down a garden path with? And the result of that is that I tend to have two different checklists. One checklist is what I'm going to show the customer as I am bidding a site, to say, okay, at the end of the road, so that you have an understanding of what done looks like, here is what I am bidding on that you may now compete and compare with other people. But in there is going to be a catch-all factor at the bottom, which is not a contingency number, but it's going to be the final delivery number of all the things that happen after we get to visually complete and a site that performs well. And now you're putting on some extra things that make sure that the site is maintainable so that you've got a very satisfied customer 6 months from now. A lot of the business I get happens to be people that have had someone design a site for them, and 3 months later, they don't know how to maintain it. Yeah, they know how to add a blog article, or they might know how to add something else onto a page, but they find that if they just put an image into the Joomla default tab for loading images 1 and 2, or putting in a link, that the template didn't get built with that feature enabled. And so the image just doesn't show up with the article. So now they're using the insert image button. And now they're trying to do an alignment on it and to size it and to get it to consistently look good on all devices. And they don't even know that they need to go check all devices and what default styling might apply there, and whether or not they need to override with a left or a right or a center type of positioning. So that's where I'm going to have a behind-the-scenes delivery checklist that is part of what I used for defining a complete site. And it's going to go into a lot of site optimization. So that's something that we're going to get into near the tail end of this talk. So measuring your value is one of those awkward discussions. I know a lot of people who had set a shop rate for what their price is per hour. And when you're at the support level, that makes some sense. I mean, what other metric do you have to set that? But I'm going to suggest that you set your shop rate extremely high. My shop rate is $240 an hour. And so that means for a commercial client that when they're buying support, they're going to buy support in 10-hour blocks, and their 10-hour blocks are going to be discounted off of a standard shop rate of $240 an hour. Now, if they want to write me a check for $2,400 to buy 10 hours, that's great. That's the minimum number of hours I will sell in a block. But typically, I'm going to be discounting that so that if they buy a block of time in advance with the idea that they are going to be charged the time on the meter as the clock is ticking as we do work, that part of the whole approach of buying a block of time in advance is, first of all, you're not in the collection business. You're not worried about getting a check at the end of the month. You're not having to document the work that you did. That there is simply a project sheet that is kept on the website in an article that they can see, that at any time they can pull up and see progress done on solving different issues and the amount of time that got charged next to that. And then as their balance on time remaining gets under about 2 hours, then they get an email with a reminder saying, go buy your next 10-hour block if you would like some more support. It is amazing how efficient that is in terms of people really don't care to see the detailed description of, I spent 0.3 of an hour solving this particular issue. The amount of documentation goes way down simply because they know every time they called you. So just having the date and that there was a telephone call to say we need to work on something. So the support side becomes very easy. I also sell the support in advance, that the first block is sold with the website, so that there is no question that after the site is delivered and that there's a warranty period to fix anything we didn't do right in the first time, that there is the first amount of block, the first block for support has already been paid for and is part of the deliverable, so that they realize that for an apples-to-apples comparison, the support block is not in the comparison when they're looking at our price compared to somebody else's price. But that they also know that their first check is going to include that support block so that we're paid for the first several months of support that might be required. Now let's jump to the design and build phase. At the design and build phase, I do not, we all kind of do a little rough calculation in the back of our head of a minimum amount of time involved to get a site built. But truly what I am looking for is what's the business value of a site? And I truly price based upon what the value is to that particular customer. Steve mentioned that a lot of my customers are nonprofits. I actually specialize in doing nonprofit websites. And for a nonprofit, they get a 50% discount on my normal pricing. But they also present a unique set of challenges. There's nothing like a nonprofit organization to be driven by a committee, and they have a committee make decision at the speed of glaciers. And so there's a lot of discussion that needs to go on while they're busy trying to save every nickel and dime that they can save. So my usual go-in approach is to say that I have a minimum price. I won't touch your website for less than $3,000. I don't care how short it is, even if it's a single page site that is 2 scroll lengths long. The process we will go through to figure out what communication has to happen and determine the strategy we're going to use for engaging all of our customers and how to segment them and to send the just right message is part of that whole discussion of figuring out what our strategy is going to be and part of that minimum requirement of what's going to go into the site. I won't even get into talking about how to build a site until we've had an initial $1,000 consultation just to come up with the strategy for the site. So we don't start unpaid. We don't have a free introductory hour or anything like that, simply because it's not necessary. I have found that my clients are willing they love my work and they're willing to pay for it. All of my business comes by referral. You might notice there is no Turn to the Pros website that is publicly visible. And that is because we don't want the cold leads. Every one of our leads is an introduction from somebody who is a satisfied customer. And that defines my ideal client. Every one of them will say, I love Duke's work and I'm willing to pay for it. And that is something that I would invite each of you to strive for and put it into your mission and into I do provide paper proposals, and that phrase is in there, and it is a statement. And if they are ready to get into nickel and diming and trying to do the mathematics of how many hours and what my shop rate might be, and if at the design phase, our internal metric is about $60 an hour for how we make sure that we're achieving a break even as a minimum. If they're doing the math behind the scenes and saying that, well, that $3,600 price, if we divide that by $60 an hour, then we all of a sudden know, how many hours that you're looking at. And, well, do we have to spend this many hours on this and this many hours on that? If they're getting into your hours and how much time you're spending on putting things together, in my book, they're not my client. They're not the kind of person I want to deal with, because they're going to be chipping away at all kinds of little things that are a struggle. So those are the people that I'm happy to introduce to somebody else. And I will make that introduction. And there are plenty of people in my geographic area that I'm happy to pass the business to, and vice versa. They're happy to pass it to me. Then there's the right kind of deal that comes in the door. With that, the question becomes, well, how do I price? And how do I say something? Well, I don't want to get into a negotiation on price. I want to get into the discussion of how much impact are we going to have? If we do this well, how will we improve your donations coming into your nonprofit? If we tell your story really well, how many more people will we reach? If we start to expand on your program, how many more people will you put through your program services, and how much revenue will you receive from funders to have serviced that many people? And when we start looking at metrics like that, which are all about improvement in their business and how they're going to improve their bottom line, our costs are extremely small in comparison to everything else they're trying to do. Compared to all the costs it takes to mount a program that's going to be, let's say, helping people that are athletically impaired, The National Ability Center is an organization in my area that helps people that have lost an arm, a leg, or they have some other physical disability, and we get them out on the ski slope. I guide people that are blind. It's a whole lot of fun to take people that have lost the use of their legs and stick them in what we call a bucket ski, and ride them up the chairlift and have them go down riding. They've got one ski that's underneath the middle of them and two outrigger skis on their arms, and they have a wonderful time. When you start measuring your success in the amount of reach that you have, how much the organization can accomplish, then all of a sudden the tables turn. Now, that said, that you do have to talk about money. And frequently, as I hear an initial scope for a website, the phrase that I consider the magic phrase that I use is most clients pay. So that's not telling them what their price is. And but it's a great way to raise the flag of, if I told you that this site was about, that most clients would pay about $6,000 for this particular site, does that make you fall off your chair? You get a very quick read about what it is without actually going into the negotiation space. I haven't told them that what I'm considering for their site yet, and what kind of discounting I might be willing to do, or what kind of add-ons we might be willing to do. I'm getting an initial read. And when they start hearing those kinds of numbers of what other people pay, and then they all of a sudden hear your total range, they're not necessarily locking in on a price yet that you have quoted, to which you're going to have scope creep cheating against it. So that's just one of those things I find very valuable. I do have a minimum, and you heard it before, that I usually won't talk to someone unless their budget is at least $3,000. If they're in the nonprofit world, and close to the $5,000 if they're in the for-profit world. The other group of clients I tend to work with are startups. There are two major incubators in the Salt Lake Valley that are helping businesses get out of their starting place. And I have to tell you, if you don't have enough business and you're looking to get some more business and you really want to start growing your portfolio quickly, one of the best places you can go is go spend a day a week in one of these co-working spaces offering your free services. Sit down and be a consultant for a day, and not trying to book any business while you're sitting there. Let's just answer questions and just tell them there to say, I'm here to help you with your online strategy and how to meet your visual communication goals of trying to communicate people through a website, through social media, whatever it might be. And when you're not trying to sell, and you're there just being a Dr. Joomla type of person that's ready to just answer any kind of a question that comes up, using any CMS that the person might be interested in. And I'm familiar with 4 that are ones that I build in. Then, the discussion gets far away from actually working the jobs. It gets into helping them accomplish their goals. And I'll talk to people, 2, 3, 4 times in the course of several months of doing these office visits, before all of a sudden at the end of the day, they'll finally decide they're ready and they've got the funding available that they can build a website. And there's only one person they would ever consider going to at that point, because we've already got a relationship built. We've already spent so much time together. I already know their business, and I've already given them the strategy that they would choose to use. And so therefore, price is no object. There's nothing to discuss. It's like, just tell us how much we need to do, because we want you to do it, and you're the person to get it. So I'm just going to invite you people to find opportunities like that, and the more that you give, the more comes back. It is amazing how well that works. There will always be the discussions about, well, how soon can we get it, and how much is it going to cost, and all the triple constraint discussions. And the simple answer to most of that is, as people try to challenge on all 3 of these topics, is to simply answer back that they only get to choose 2 out of 3. They're between time, cost, and quality. Something's got to give. They can pick 2. That's the maximum. And then the one I am always a rejoinder on is to say that the reason why you came to me is you have an expectation of quality. And if you have put too much pressure on either time or cost, we will not achieve that quality goal. And if you don't allow me to achieve the level of quality that I consistently could produce, you are not my customer. I need a customer that is willing to go down the journey with me to produce exceptional websites. and exceptional client communication tools. And so if they're willing to walk that journey with me, and they're putting quality number one as the reason why they walked in the door with me, then we can have a whole discussion about what kind of a budget do you want to have, and how much time can you afford. Because if time is not a factor and they're trying to go for low cost, then I have no problem offshoring some of the work and taking advantage of some of the Joomlers that we have throughout the world that live in countries like Vietnam and Bangladesh and other places like that, and India, that are willing to do work incredibly inexpensively and do high quality work. And I love to sub out that work. But to do that well, I will not let it go out of my shop and be subbed out to somebody unless I've got enough time that when it comes back in the door, I can do it all over again myself. I've got to have that time flexibility to say, I can afford to have sent it out, have it not quite meet the mark, and still meet the deadline for the deliverable. One of the things that I have that people are kind of surprising about is that I have an absolute guarantee that if you're not satisfied and giving us an indication of something you're unhappy with and we cannot solve the problem, then they don't pay. So, and we get to milestones within a website that if we don't start the next phase of work or the next set of enhancements until we've got a sign off that the customer's happy with the previous stuff and they paid for it, and so that we were all set and ready to keep moving forward. But if for any reason they are not happy, I don't want to have a situation where I kept their money and that they're not satisfied. So I have refunded money on sites. I've done it a number of times, and it is simply because the expectations didn't match. And we were not a good match at the outset. I should have seen it coming, and shame on me for having not identified it early on. But along the way, it is an opportunity to do right by them. And I have to tell you, every time I've done that, the social media value, the referral value of that client actually turned out much higher than anyone else. That they will walk away from that and say, hey, we didn't meet the goal for a particular reason. They'll usually take it on themselves that they had mismatched expectations and that it wasn't communicated well, or we had a challenge with something that wasn't being built to their satisfaction. Or they wanted to have a different graphic design involved, and just the look and feel just wasn't matching up quite right. But they are the first to recommend me to somebody else to say, if you match what Duke builds and you like the look of the stuff that he builds, then by all means go use them. And so they become some of my fiercest advocates. So I'm just going to say, if this is the opportunity to use your constraints to your advantage, and there's nothing like a guarantee to have a very, very satisfied customer. The thing that is almost always the pressure is time, and so therefore I clearly educate customers that the thing that's got to give, since we're not going to give on quality, is we're going to give on cost, and to expect that if we have to go on double time to make a tight deadline, that the price has to go up. And they all buy into that up front because we have the conversation up front and they realize what's coming along. There are a couple of things to do to close the deal. One is that you need to create a sense of urgency. There is some added value offer that you can offer that if they agree to sign up today or by the end of the week, that there is something more you will do that is not in the bid, that is something that will help the contract get underway. But I'm going to counsel you to never have that be a discount. There is nothing like a free gift to get people to be motivated to meet a deadline. So if they book by a certain day, we'll throw in production of an ebook that can be downloaded from the site, and we'll build a landing page to get those conversions going as a lead generator for you. And we will offer that absolutely free. But the condition is that we have an opportunity to do some work starting 2 weeks from now. We want to fill our backlog up to our usual 3-week level. And if you're willing to sign this week, then our backlog is full, so we're ready to give that gift to you. If you're not able to meet this opportunity, then the gift goes away. What never works, as far as I am concerned, is to discount, to have a percentage off or anything like that. because all that does is devalue your worth in their eyes. They all of a sudden realize that, hey, if you were willing to do support work for $240 an hour, and all of a sudden you were discounting temporarily for $200, why can't you discount it all the time? Why can't you discount it to half that all the time? I hear that the only discount that they will ever hear about is that I do discount to nonprofits, and that I tell the corporate people that they are paying more on average than my typical client, because part of their money goes to making it affordable for us to service nonprofits, and that is part of our social benefit to the world. It's part of why they choose to engage with us. And so if you're a for-profit working with us, you know that part of the money that's being collected is actually to finance work for a nonprofit. One of the challenges I always face is that I am a solopreneur. I do send business out, and I work with a number of other people to have a larger virtual corporation. One of the wonderful things about the Joomlaverse is that we have a great way to have a team that is much larger than any one person. There are a tremendous number of solopreneurs inside our universe that you can refer business to, and they'll refer business back to you. There are people I can call up on a moment's notice and say, hey, I'm stuck on something, I need your help. And there's a group of people that I use that we've negotiated a rate that we just simply cross bill at. And so if they're helping me, that they use the same rate that if I'm helping them. And at the end of the month, we just balance the tables and keep it worthwhile. The advantage of that is that I can have a team larger than myself. I can go on vacation, and I can put up in a shared drive all the information about different customers and what some of their issues are, and have someone spend an hour getting to know those customers and what their challenges might be if they were to call. And I'm happy to pay for that hour or two of prep time. And then they're ready to answer the support calls for me. So there's always someone at the end of the telephone. It is amazing how good this community is to find people who will partner with each other and share. One of the things that I recommend as a mentor when I'm working with people who are getting started in this industry is to try to find someone who's at the same stage of business development as you are, that is no more than 1 or 2 steps ahead of you. And you want someone who's a little bit ahead because, just like if you're learning to play tennis, you always want to be playing with the tennis player that's just a little bit better than you, so that they keep stretching your game and you'll learn something from the other person. But if they're too far ahead of you, there's not much you can learn. You don't have all your fundamentals in place, and you don't have enough experience to appreciate what they're doing. And they'll also lose patience with you because you're not close enough matched. So to be truly good mastermind or mentoring networks, you need to be working with people that are very similarly situated. So that's where I go to Joomla events, and I find people are very similarly situated to I am. Roughly same number of years of experience, using the same kind of tools, kind of settled on the same extensions. That is our short list of extensions that we love to use. And I'm happy to just work out arrangements with those people that we can back each other up, and we can call each other to ask questions. We can solve and troubleshoot issues together. So great way to build a business. I'm just going to close on this part of it with recognizing that done is always better than perfect. It took me a while to learn this. Part of why I get the clientele I have is that I am a perfectionist, and I do aim for extremely high levels of quality in everything that I do. But along the way, that we had to figure out where things could compromise and where done had to occur. And there had to be a negotiation of what done meant long before we started the project. So I'm very happy to know when we've done enough and that we don't need to do more. For one, is that we don't want to run up the bill higher than is absolutely necessary to get to a level of performance that matches the customer's expectations. But the other is scope creep happens. And I can't tell you how many times, especially in the nonprofit world, that someone will say, oh, while you're in there, can you also do this? And each of you has experienced this. It just happens. And there is no easy solution to scope creep. And we all like to think that we follow an agile workflow, that we're going to keep adjusting our targets as time goes by. And not a lot of the done is defined well in advance in terms of specifically what tool we're putting in and how it's going to work. Some things are designed as we're traveling down the garden pathway. But nevertheless, we need to know what the final objectives are of the site. And so I will define in my proposal what outcomes are expected. And I will define those outcomes in user journeys. So this is where if you've not studied the user experience part of things and this new discipline that's been around for the last 5 years in terms of how they look at the world differently, this is a great time to start following some of the user experience authors that are out there and website developers. There's a number of publications by an organization called The Future, and they misspell it intentionally. It's THE, the, but future does not have an E on it, so it's FUTUR. And this is a gentleman by the name of Chris Doe, is somebody I started following a couple of years ago, and he puts out a tremendous number of YouTube videos that are all about the design side of the business, and it plays to my weak side. I am much better as a coder and as a graphic executor doing scalable vector graphics and that kind of stuff. And so these are the guys who really have a different perspective of what the user journey might be. And from them, I picked up how to really define outcomes. That at the end of the day, it's just like agile stories, user stories. At the end of the day, we can expect that a user can come in and sign up for a conference and choose between 2 pricing levels and complete their registration in a single session. That if there is a bounce of their credit card, that they've got the ability to easily come back in and put in a new credit card number. Those kinds of outcomes. And that's how I tend to define the deliverable on a website. It is very rare that I will actually specify the tool that's going to be used. I will simply say an e-commerce system, because sometimes it's not until halfway through the site, as we are getting close to defining what products are being sold and what funny parts of the deliverables there might be, that we need a deep level of integration inside Joomla to have registered users receive and have access to things. And so therefore, that's going to help me choose whether I want more of a membership style e-commerce solution versus a product oriented and shipping and delivery oriented e-commerce solution. So I will rarely define them that far in advance. Just to wrap up a little bit, as we're getting close to the end of our time, I'm going to now get to part of that going for done. So after a website is done, complete, looking really good, and we've got the aesthetic appeal that both the customer is looking for and that we're satisfied from a maintenance point of view, that we've got images all correctly optimized and everything is looking good. There's a couple places I go for optimization. So one is, I've mentioned images, and at the launch of a website, all the images, you've taken the time to go through an image optimizer and get them all set up so that we are sending the just right images to all the different sizes of a website. And we are using a source set on the picture tag or on an image tag to send the just right image to every device based on its bandwidth requirements and screen display size. So optimizing for images is great. But there's nothing like looking at a site 3 months down the road, and all of a sudden the customers started putting up their own blog posts and putting in images, and you see those 2 meg and 3 meg images being uploaded straight out of camera with a DCIM 415 type of naming convention. And the SEO sucks on that. And that the delivery time is trashing your page load time and those kinds of things. So I'm just going to suggest that there's a couple ways that I solve that. One of those is that I will buy the $10 a month subscription to Lightroom from Adobe's Creative Cloud for those people, and I will put in presets that they can load their images straight out of their camera, and then with one button they can style it for a particular location on the page. So that I will do a preset button that says, for example, blog article right vertical. And so it's an article that's going to show up on the right side of the page in a vertical crop aspect ratio. And that with that one touch, the image that is loaded is now being cropped to an aspect ratio, and they've just got the opportunity to slide the image back and forth under the cropping bar to select the aspect ratio and sweet part of the image that they want to see once it is going to show up on the site. Then there's another button that will do the optimization to the exact number of pixels that's ideal for that particular slot in the template, as well as its alternative sizes. And it opens an FTP session to upload it straight into the image folder in the blog subfolder to the location where I want that file to show up. So that we now have perfectly optimized images, and so all they have to do is, as they're editing their article, is to attach the appropriate master size image. And then, of course, all the sub-sized images are being pulled along with that. Now, going for PageRank, that is something I use the tool Web Page Test quite frequently because Google cares a lot about how fast a site loads. And there's one trick that I picked up along the way that I now use on each site. And it requires two pieces. First piece is that I use re-replacer to do a magic little search and replace on the fully rendered web page before it's finally sent out to the end client, to the browser, that searches for the phrase source equals images. So there's the search phrase that you see on the screen, and that's the short part it's looking for, is I'm just looking for anything that has been stuck in the images folder with a source tag. It is going to be an image tag that uses source as opposed to href. So this is going to target and find all the images that are on the website web page that's being delivered. And then replace it with a placeholder image. That's what that base 64 little code is. It's a little 1x1 transparent pixel that will load instantly and then puts behind it a data tag that's got a source with the remainder of the images phrase. So the search above was finding the full URL to a particular image, /images/blog/myimage.jpg. And now in the replacement, it's got a new source that's going to load almost instantaneously because it is just a 1x1 pixel that is right here in this data. And then it's going to have as an attribute /images/blog/myimage.jpg as the ultimate image to load. What this will do is cause every one of the images on the page to load virtually instantaneously. And as far as Google is concerned, your site has reached 100% page load right away. And then we're going to run a little JavaScript that's now going to put the images back in. So this is a way to cheat the load system and to have it bring up your images now in full definition without using a lazy load. Because one of the things I find obnoxious about a lazy load is if you're on a long page and you're scrolling down, you're actually waiting for images to come in. And I get impatient with that at times. So I would rather have all those images preloaded as I'm ready to scroll down the page. And so this is one of the opportunities to get those images in. So this is the script that gets used. It gets stuck in a custom module, and it's in essence going to search for all the elements that have an image tag. And it's going to find that data source attribute. And if it finds that data source attribute, it's going to substitute that as the source attribute. So now all of a sudden, every one of those images on the page has been redefined to what it really is going to load as. Let me show you a waterfall as the way to see how this works out. So just here that you can see, first of all, the module that is used to publish this. So this is a custom module. Excuse me, I'm in re-replacer right now. So components, re-replacer, great component that comes from Regular Labs. If you've not discovered the Regular Labs little pieces of gems, go find them. They are wonderful. But this particular one, I'll just close out of it a second so that you can see the list. So I'm in the classic Regular Labs set of replacements. It's called Defer Image Load. And what it is doing is simply going to scan the rendered page and find those image tags and search for the image, replace it with that ultimate long string plus the images as the data source. And so now that has fixed the initial page that's being rendered by the server. Now the next thing will happen is that we've got a module, and I use Flexi Custom Module for anything that's going to have HTML PHP in it. That this is simply just a JavaScript that you can stick in. And I load that module at the tail end of the page. Sometimes it's clear down the debug position. In this particular template, it was more convenient to put in the footer position. But I want it loading near last after all the images have been loaded. And then it is its launch will be deferred by a Windows onload delay, waiting until all those images are in so that this function will be able to operate properly. So then it self-fires the init function, which is going to go through and replace all those image tags. The net result of this is that you get a web page performance that scores extremely high. And when you look at a waterfall view, this is a website, a web page, whose true complete load is clear out here in 11 seconds because it is extremely image heavy and has a slideshow in it that is a rather significant part of the component. And those are by necessity fairly sizable images. So I don't want to wait for Google to decide that my page load is complete somewhere out here in the 9 and 10 seconds area, that it's going to decide that this is a viable website. I want this to get down to a short delivery. So just by using this particular tool, as far as Google is concerned, this is a completed image clear up here at the 3.25 second mark. And so we're going to get a higher page rank out of Google because all the essential images that did not go through replacement all loaded fairly early, and then by prioritization. I'm sorry, this one actually gets credit for a 2.5 page load. Here you can see the numbers. So as far as Google is concerned, your total load time was 3.3. You get to visually complete at 3.36 seconds. The real page weight of this thing is rather heavy. It's a 12-second load. But as far as Google's concerned, in terms of did it reach visually complete fairly early, everything loaded at a very early time, and so it has a very, very high page rank. So this is just one of the tricks that I use to optimize. The other one is I can't say enough about JH Optimize for now taking this whole pile of CSS that you see in items 1 through 14 on the waterfall and turning them into one file to eliminate all those requests, and then the next 7 or 8 JavaScripts and turning those into one request. And when that happens, the load time on this particular site then drops under 1.7 seconds, which for a CMS based site is pretty darn spectacular. The final thing that I will do also as an optimization is go to htaccess and now also set how long the timeouts will be for different assets that are served based on their extension. So I will tell it that certain extensions, if they're not being delivered through the CDN, might have a cacheability of hours or days if this is a relatively static website. That the only page that needs to have a fairly frequent update might be the blog page, in which case anything that has blog in the URL might have a refresh time of 1 hour as opposed to 1 day, where the images might last 7 days, and so they can stay distributed out through the ISPs or be posted out through a CDN, so that you get full advantage of that. So when you use those kinds of tricks, you finally get a load time that Google just loves, and as a result, users love it too. So we have reached our time period. Steve, I'll let you throw up any questions that might have come out of this, and otherwise I appreciate your attention and hope you found this useful.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Duke. A lot of people are asking you for that snippet you just shared.
So the slides I presume, Steve, you're putting the slides up on the website somewhere, correct?
Yeah, we'll collect them from people and put them at joomlashack.com/conference.
Great. So they'll be there, but also you can do a screen print real fast. So this is the search and replace on re-replacer. So I'll give you just a couple more moments to hit your print screen button to make sure you've got it all. And then the other one is, this is the script that goes in a custom module.
Okay. That one probably needs to be somewhere where they can copy and paste it.
Sure. Screen print helps, but yeah.
Great. We can probably get the slides up in the next 24 hours or so for people.
Sure. I'll fire them off to you as soon as we're off.
Do we have any questions from the attendees?
I don't see the comments, so I'm relying on you to put them up.
Okay, we've got a question from Paul asking about if you recommend a optimization solution for Joomla sites. For example, JCH Optimize, or do you have another preference for making Joomla sites run fast?
The only one I use is JCH Optimize. It is, the price is right. It is the go-to tool. Every now and then I will use a template from one of the major template houses because it's such a long way down the path of what the final deliverable site might be. So for example, if I have to do a real estate site that's really built around one of the property style extensions, of which there are a precious few in the Joomlaverse to choose from, but then you really want to be picking as a starting point a template that's got most of that architecture done as a starting point, and then you're really working in someone else's template design. But with those, I find that they are typically built on frameworks that come from companies that have spent a lot of time working on their frameworks to make their templates very supportable in their world. And those frameworks will have built into them these optimizers that will consolidate JavaScript and CSS. And invariably, I find them less effective because they are not doing a full scan of the rendered web page. They're being fired too soon in the process. So kind of like Ray Replacer will find the image tags of the fully rendered page if you run it last in the order of firing of plugins. The same idea that JCH Optimize, if you put it low in the firing order, it will find all the CSS tagged items and all the JavaScript tagged items and does a nice job of consolidating them together. And we'll also put them out in a format that you can use them with a CDN and be able to use cache busting with it by putting a UUID as part of the file name when it goes out to a CDN, so that if you were to change the underlying file, it will break the cache. So that's the one I use. I love it.
Cool. You're getting a lot of thanks in the chat, including Arturo from Mexico. But we do have one more question from John. What extensions does Duke almost always use when building a Joomla site?
Oh, it's the same as most, I'm sure. Of course, Akiba is in there for backups and admin tools to help manage the protection of the site. JC is my editor of choice. I do tend to use the no number, or sorry, that dates me, the regular labs tools. Whenever I hit those awkward moments, I will put their clear cache button up in most of the sites that I use. I will also use their better preview. Mr. Van Westen does a nice job with these just little functional utility tools that I will plug into a site. I will jump into an aside and say that it's too bad I announced my topic earlier, because we could have done a whole hour on being very opinionated about site builders versus page builders and the role of page builders in the Joomlaverse.
You know what our next presentation is in the conference?
Oh, good.
It's all about
I will
page
make
builders.
sure I tune in on it. Because just to put an opinion out there, I think page builders should be banned every place except a homepage. They are the most unmaintainable concepts as can be built, and they put so much overhead into the code that's being rendered that just to handle all the contingencies of all the little things that might be built. The solution I have found is that I will use a page builder to build a page, for example, a complicated homepage. I will then render that and then turn it into a static HTML page and just serve the pre-rendered static page as a replacement for actually firing the page builder. That will actually make the homepage the fastest page of the entire site. And I just know that if I go in and make a change that affects a portion of the homepage, that, you know, in essence, whole chunks of that page are sitting there in custom HTML modules that are just rendering out static stuff. And it's a tougher maintenance job, but you finally got your performance back that you would have lost if you did that whole thing as a custom page.
Okay, so you have extensions that you use on every site and some that you avoid on every site, mainly page builders.
Absolutely. My particular bit is I also really strongly believe that we should be using extensions that are fairly Joomla native. And what I mean by that is they use articles, that they know how to use categories. They know how to use data structures for which once the data has been put in there, other extensions can go see it, as opposed to being silos of information that you don't have a way to access. And so a lot of what is my personal criteria for what will get onto my list of extensions to use is if they're off building their own little repository for data and that I can't reach across and use it with something else, I'm not very interested in it. There's magic in the Joomla structure. I like it.
Cool. Well, thank you so much indeed, Duke. That was, like you said, opinionated.
Yes.
And some strong and useful opinions. We really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. I hope everyone has a nice lunch, and looking forward to the session that comes up after lunch. Thank you very much, Steve, for putting this together. Hats off to you and Joomla Shack for taking the lead for allowing us to still have a virtual world conference.
Thanks, everyone.